Hello,
Hey,
everybody. I am Anisa Omar. I use she, her pronouns. I am from Mankato, Minnesota. I'm a graduate from Minnesota State University, Mankato, with a degree in political science and a minor in ethnic studies. Apart from that, as you all can probably see, I am a Black Muslim woman, born the first in my family to be born and raised here in the US, more specifically in Mankato. When presented with the opportunity to speak about militarism and the environment, I was super excited and stoked to do so. As a Somali woman, my family has been impacted by militarism. My family is originally from Somalia, where there has been throughout the Obama era, throughout the Trump era, and most recently, Biden era of his residency, consistent airstrikes and bombings in Somalia by the US government. The drone strikes are often a part of the US Africa Command, oftentimes known as AFRICOM. And when you go on their website, their mission statement reads, it's the US Africa Command with partners, counters, transnational threats, and malign actors. It strengthens security forces and responds to crisis in order to advance US national interest and promote regional security, stability, and prosperity. However, they are oftentimes guilty of untold numbers of civilian deaths. We often deploy US troops to combat terrorism, yet it oftentimes has an opposite effect and it encourages asymmetric types of resistance such as terrorism. Looking outside of Somalia, we can see this in Israel and what happened this past summer with Palestine and Israel. We also were made aware during the uprisings after the tragic murder of George Floyd that many of our police forces actually go to Israel to train. Us in Minnesota, it was the Minneapolis Police Department that went to Israel to train with the Israeli forces. We also are responsible for funding the Israeli government oftentimes, the most recent bill coming from Congress. Outside of Israel and Palestine, we can see it in what was happening in Bolivia last year. There was an election, and also prior to that, or currently what's happening in Cuba, and our most recent one being Afghanistan. The impacts of US imperialism can be seen all across the globe, as well as in the US. My example that I like to use is military recruiters and the ways in which they exploit high school students, more specifically in low-income areas. Oftentimes in the form of promising them access to college scholarships. And sadly, these students are not able to afford or have the resources to attend college, so they are looped into joining the military in that form. Lastly, the impacts the US military is having on the environment. A report from Brown University has estimated that since the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, the US military has emitted gases. And this is just in 2017 alone, and it has increased since then. And this is much more than many of industrialized nations that we know of. And so when addressing climate change, we must begin including the US military and their involvement in that, and advocate for the ending and stopping of the US imperialism, which oftentimes will address anti-Blackness, as well as many forms of hate that we see across our nation. We spend billions of dollars on the military per year, when we can utilize that to provide housing, health insurance. I'm a graduate, so student loans would be a big one for me and for many individuals across our country. And so we need to watch more closely what the US government is choosing to invest in, because that'll show you what as a nation our commitments are, and looking at it closely, what it shows me is that America is a nation built on violence and currently is committed to maintaining that form of dominance all across the globe and maintaining that form of violence as well. And so we cannot address anti-Blackness, we cannot address anti-Asian rhetoric, we cannot address anti-Muslim rhetoric without addressing US imperialism in all of its forms. When we look more closely at US imperialism and what's happening all across the globe, we'll notice that our fight for liberation must include all individuals all across the world. If we truly want to address anti-Blackness, we must first begin by addressing US imperialism, which starts with addressing the military and the ways in which it's being used in America. I'm going to end this off with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., who stated that the three evils of society is racism, economic exploitation, and militarism. And so we must begin addressing those evils. And I do believe that they all are interconnected within militarism, racism, and economic exploitation, and the way in which we are sending our police officers overseas to bring that dominance back into the US, and our spending or our funding of the US military, to which prevents us from truly providing the care and resources a lot of Americans need. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Jamil.
Thank you, Anisa, so much.